if you want to prep them on what it is they should say or be prepared to say if they have an opportunity, is 5 minutes of passion. You have to be able to articulate over 5 minutes why you're passionate about what you do.
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 Podcast.
What's up, Mount Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 Podcast. 130 plus episodes deep in this journey, and for the first time, we get to speak to an amazing leader that's been in the construction real estate business, that has recently retired, and we get to look back at an entire body of work, talk through mentorship, lessons learned, a life well lived, and what the future looks like in some of these rocking chair moments. So Brad Blankenship, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Guys, thanks for having me. I'm excited about it. First podcast, obviously.
Well, that's quite an honor for us then, as we're getting you on the air for the first time here. We talked before we got started about how we were going to ice out Parscale and not say his name, but we'll just go ahead and say, friend of the show. Did he make the connection with Brad? I'm not sure exactly how that happened.
Yeah, I'm assuming they had a recent meeting several weeks ago, and Justin was like, you got to get Brad on. He's a great leader in our industry, recently retired. He was so energetic about it, as Justin is. And then several weeks later, got us hooked up on a group text. And from there, it sounds like you listened to a couple podcasts with Javier, and then it just weirdly rolled to Justin.
Magically, Justin was next. And then I was hooked from there.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Justin here, so we don't have to wonder if that is going to happen at all. We did think about Justin, though we did think about icing you out. And kind of back then to Brad is, we opened this thing up with what we've called our elevator pitch. Tell us who Brad is. And you might have an interesting answer given that, the seasons have changed a touch. So tell us who's Brad.
I have a canned elevator speech that we were trained to give in the event somebody said, hi, I'm Brad, and let's say you're just, or you're Kevin, and tell me what you do. And so this was obviously the business one. I need a new one because I'm now retired, but the business one was always, I manage complex design and construction projects, saving my clients 5 to 10% of their overall project costs. And normally somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 hours of the time they would otherwise spend managing those projects. Would you like to know more?
Yeah.
So obviously that was the business foray. And then there was this little gimmick trick that I could do behind it with that. Kevin, you and I could do this. I would ask you, Kevin, so let's say you were going to pay me a fee of $1. So let's say you handed me $1 and I would grab 2 out of my pocket and I would give you 2 back. I said, that's what it's like doing business with our firm.
Oh, I like
Snap.
that.
Yeah.
So those are all, and that was the training that we got at the Staubach Company. And it was a wonderful, I say wonderful, it's a bit military-like, a little bit stiff, but it's always a foray because somebody said, you save a lot of money on these projects. And it opened up another conversation.
Well, okay. So we gave the preview to where we're headed, which is retirement and the idea of looking back through your career and the lessons that you learned and all of that. But we got to tell a story to get there first. So jump in wherever you want to jump in, but tell us a story.
A story about growing up?
Yeah, sure.
I grew up here in North Texas. I was born here. I'm a native Texan. Not many of us left. I finished up a 43-year career here recently. It seems like time has flown by, but grew up in Wichita Falls, I was born in Wichita Falls. At the ripe age of 3, we migrated, my parents and family, et cetera, moved to Richardson, small little home in North Richardson. And I think north of Canyon Creek and Prairie Creek, where I think were cotton fields and farms at the time. So a lot of our conversation today about maybe my childhood is going to predate certainly both of you. And because it was literally back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. I was born in 58. So anyway, went to school in Richardson, went to J.J. Pierce High School, graduated in 76. And, childhood was fun. I remember being barefoot most of the time, just outdoors, because I think that's where Mom wanted me, was outdoors. We usually we're pretty good kids. We didn't get in too much trouble, but early on, I liked building things. I remember building a rocket ship out of plywood when I was about 9. Silly kind of thing, but had a door on it. I could get in it and took a marker and created some stuff.
This is a sizable project.
This is a sizable project. It took me about a week to build it and probably took me 2 weeks to get rid of it. And Dad told me, get that out of the driveway. But I was always into that kind of stuff. By 10, I was stripping down bicycles down to the frame, sanding them down, repainting them. I was always a project-oriented kind of guy. And we had a lot of fun as kids. It was a different time back then. There wasn't a lot going on. Obviously, there was no technology. There was no phones. There's nothing on television, nothing pre-recorded. There was no iPads, nothing to look at like that. So we made up our own fun.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of playing around with fireworks, doing things with fireworks that we shouldn't do. Just that kind of humble beginnings. We didn't have a lot. My dad was a controller with the FAA, air traffic controller.
Ooh,
Korean
stressful
War.
job.
Mm-hmm, very stressful. Ironically, he had a medical disability at the age of 45. He retired at 45 years old. My dad's still living, but he's in a memory unit right now. But humble beginnings, didn't have a lot of money, not a lot of discretionary funds, so we did with what we did. And conservative family. There was arguments about bell bottoms and long hair.
I bet.
Back in those days. And so that's the kind of childhood home and neighborhood we grew up in. We knew it was time to come home at night when it'd get to be about dark time and the street lights would come on and I could hear my mother holler from about 3 blocks away, which you can't hear that kind of voice anymore in these neighborhoods. It's drowned out by all the other noise. But back then I could hear her from 3 blocks away. We would come in and dinner was ready and all that stuff. It was a bit of the Ozzie Harriet, Ward and June Cleaver time is what it was.
I can relate to that. Even with my upbringing, I had to be within earshot of my dad's whistle, which he could whistle loud. And to get me home, he would go on the front porch, whistle, and clock was ticking.
Knew it was time.
Yeah, I had to get back. And now in the tablet era with my 5-year-old daughter, she's glued to that thing, or she wants technology, and you have to almost force her outside. But it's worth that consistency, because once you get her outside and you get some reps of enjoying nature and just being out in the element, she starts to crave it. But her natural tendency is to stay inside. And I think you just see that in neighborhoods all over the place now.
You know, it's a time lost, because I'm not sure I would send my grandkids down the street on a bicycle 3 blocks away, unsupervised in North Dallas anymore. How can you do that?
Well, I will tell a story that might warm your heart, but during COVID, I live roughly where you live. My family, my kids, my oldest son is a freshman at Pierce. We kind of went the other way. So Park Hill was our junior high, right. Bowie is our elementary, but we live right there. And during COVID, the streets were full of kids.
Right.
When you couldn't kind of go and do all the things that we're going and doing and fill your time in your life with all the things we're filling it with, the kids became kids. And there was a bicycle group that rode all over the neighborhood, and we kind of knew where they were because of their cell phones and stuff, but they'd go from house to house and jump in somebody's pool and go over to the other house and climb in the tree and go over to the other house and eat lunch. And it kind of felt like a real regression to, not the same, but a similar feeling of perhaps when you were there growing up. It was just more open, and they were just being kids. It was awesome.
I miss that time.
Yeah.
I really want it for my grandkids, and I just don't see how they can get it. They're pretty well, their lives are pretty well programmed with a lot of activities, and there's a lot of good that comes out of that. But man, I remember just spending hours and hours away from the home on a bicycle, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 miles away from home.
Mm-hmm.
It's just probably unheard of today.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Concerning today.
Exactly.
Where are the parents?
Why are these children out here?
Yeah.
In our prep sheet, you had taken a note that your dad was a war vet.
Yeah.
Did he talk about it growing up?
He did some. There was a time that he didn't want to speak about it at all. As he got older, he shared a little bit more and wanted me to know about the planes, et cetera. And so he was I'm going to forget what it was, but basically he plotted where bombs would be dropped, and also did radar jamming, right? So he was flying bombers in the Korean War.
Wow.
Tells me a couple stories about taking some shrapnel into the hull of the plane, 2 plane crashes that he survived, both of which were training missions, one of which he's jumping out the door as the plane is landing. So some pretty wild stuff. So some of the things he had not told me before, and I got into some detail. It's just amazing. And of course, he was just a kid. He was 19, 20 years old.
Yeah. There's a photo in our entryway of my wife's grandfather. This is in World War II. The timelines don't exactly like, but he's a kid holding a machine gun, like about to get on it, and he's a child.
Yes. And
we forget that, So the reason I was kind of thinking about it was to come back to the question, like, how much did that influence the way you grew up in your home? Was it present? Was your dad's service to our country? Like, how did that show up there?
Like most men, probably in that age, it was. And I think war veterans in general, a lot of them will suppress some of that. And so as it relates to family and how much of that became part of our everyday lives, I think he purposely avoided sharing a lot of it, especially when we were young. But I will say that his style of discipline certainly mimicked that of the armed forces. And so
listeners can't see the grin that just popped up on your face, but it's worth noting here. It was, it was an interesting smile there.
Yeah, it was, obviously those were the 60s. And, again, just a dad that was dedicated to his family, dedicated to his work. And, Dad, as a FAA air traffic controller, he did shift work. And so oftentimes he would be controlling the airways early morning and late at night, and he would sleep during the day. And it was difficult for Mom to keep us kids quiet while Dad slept in the middle of the day. But believe you me, we knew when it was time to be quiet, because if Dad got up and his sleep was interrupted, oh my. Yeah, that was not good.
Yeah.
But
could hear a pin drop after that.
Yeah.
We did it. We woke him up once.
One time.
Never again. Yeah.
But he's a sweet man. And I miss part of him because he is in a memory unit, and he's lost some of that, but he's my last surviving parent.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Let me as I'm looking through some of the notes you took, a couple hop out to me in terms of like growing up, and so we don't have to like what.
I'm hoping this is where you're going.
That's not actually where I was going. Kevin is doing air drum arms over here, so hoping that I'm going to ask about the drum set, but I'm actually more interested in your car. You made a note here, so there has to be some import or story there.
Let's talk about it.
There we go. I found it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love me some cars. So, back in the 60s and 70s, muscle cars were a big thing. And my first car, which Dad helped me acquire, was his own, which was a Toyota Celica at the time. And so put some mag wheels on a Toyota Celica. That was a really hot vehicle, as you can imagine. But rode that as long as I could. And I just had the yearning for more of a muscle car. So when I was able, and with my own money I had saved, financed a purchase of a used 72 Plymouth Cuda. So today that car is probably worth somewhere between $80,000 and $150,000, depending on the condition, what's in it. Of course, I think I melted the engine on it itself. But I was a bit of a gearhead. So I had fat tires in the back, 70s on the front, and it was a 340, big block, had a slapstick, automatic transmission. Slapsticks are gone. I guess it was like one of the first paddle transmissions.
Yeah.
It wasn't paddle. It was just slapstick. Headman headers, Edelbrock manifold, all that kind of good stuff. Holly quad.
Did you do all the work on it?
I did. And so I screwed up and basically broke as much as I fixed.
Sure.
But the car looked cool and sounded cool. And it was my pride and joy. I've got lots of pictures of that car. It's gold with a black stripe, black vinyl top. It was a sweet ride. Had a great sound. So occasionally we would race them in parts of town where today you can't even imagine two cars side by side, just sitting still, lowering a little bit of, taking a little air out of your back tires and putting a pint of something in your fuel tank. You just can't imagine that scenario. In fact, I'll just tell you, it was at Coit and Campbell, which is right down the street.
Unimaginable at that intersection.
It was nothing but black street, no lights, just quarter-mile runway.
Yeah. You don't know exactly where that is, but it's a humongous intersection now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. But that was the neighborhood at the time, right? Like I've seen these photos of our house when it was built. It was built in the early 60s, and it's straight line from our house to the elementary because there's nothing there, and it's a mile, but there's nothing between the two. So it's just it's changed. Things have changed.
It's all changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but love the car. I had my head under the hood of it most of the time. It's where I spent most of my discretionary funds, between that and a girlfriend. And that seemed to be most of high school. I kept a job, and to afford those things,
sure,
girlfriend, car.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'll go there. Drums. Tell us about that. Kevin, want to hear a drummer story?
Well, how do we not take note that he was the drummer in a rock band?
I know. There's a lot of good stuff on here. I'm not trying to skip any of it, but yeah.
Probably the most unlikely guy, right, to be a drummer in a rock band. And as you sit here and look at me, a guy struggling, like Kevin with the amount of follicles on his head.
Yeah, not much hair banging.
Yes. I had shoulder length hair, and it's down in my eyes somewhat, and I wear a pair of overalls, and no shirt. But anyway, we were rockers.
That's not what he's wearing right now.
For the record. For the record, that's right. I've always loved music. Loved back in that day, classic rock, Zeppelin, Skinner. We were doing Allman Brothers. We were doing James Gang. We were doing all that type of stuff, ZZ Top, anything and that was what all the kids wanted to hear. And so I bought a used set as a Gretsch set, a little 5-piece. Still remember it. Wish I had it today because it would be, again, very valuable.
Yep.
Had a kind of a shiny aluminum flake to it, and cymbals were a little tired, but it got the job done. And that's what I learned on. And I just self-taught.
Yeah.
And today, if you handed me a sheet of music, I wouldn't have a clue, but if you want me to play a rock beat, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I could do it. Moved on up to, I had a black Ludwig set, 6-piece, and we started playing in a band, and my parents' house, they had added a second story, right, to our house, and we lacked for a place to practice. And I think my parents had, in their wisdom, said, well, why don't y'all come play at our house? And I think this is the way they kept an eye on us, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because frankly, some of the characters that were part of this band were, they're a little sketchy.
Yeah.
And so there's a small little hallway up to this second store, and had guys bringing, Fender amps and Marshall amps up this flight of stairs. And Dad says, as long as they don't skin the walls, we would set up this full 6-piece band upstairs and just rock the neighborhood. and to this date, I have no idea how my parents could stand living downstairs, but they sucked it up, and to their credit said, he's here. We see his friends. We know who he's with. We know what he's doing. And every now and then they go upstairs and bob their head up and down to the beat or something like that because they approved or liked what we were playing. But that was fun times. And some crazy characters, you know how bands are. They break up as soon as they come together, and somebody gets mad, they leave, and you got to go find another singer. And our singer looked like David Lee Roth, and he even pulled his shirt off so he could, do his Van Halen screams too. It was fun. Me and my best buddy, he played rhythm guitar, and I played drums, and we were. He was my close friend. He went to Richardson.
Okay, yeah.
He was an Eagle, and I was a Mustang, and it was fun. playing is some of the best times I ever had. We played youth groups at churches. Had to keep it on the clean side.
Yeah,
at the church.
Shirts on.
That's shirts on. Yeah. And when they said the show was over at 10, they meant the show was over at 10. In fact, one of the
House lights are up.
Yeah,
at
house
10.
lights actually went down at 10 while we were still playing, including the power.
See ya.
So, yeah, it's over, boys. Did that in schools, junior highs, high schools. Played at my own high school, which was pretty interesting. For I think it was a Halloween party or something like that. But I played a little in college. Go out to Tawakoni and play some country western band. Should have had chicken wire in front of it, but it didn't. But that was a lot of fun. I sold my set in high school in college. Later bought an electronics set just because I couldn't give it up.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'm an old rocker.
Yeah.
Still love it. I still love music.
Yeah, the cars, the rock, and you could see construction and competitiveness also interlaced, and they're outbidding your friend in some mowing and building Shakespeare's Globe Theater at a young age. So you have a little bit of that, which starts shaping your future career in the moment.
It was a terrible and almost embarrassing story. With 7 years old, my dad and I were out in front, my neighbor across the street, and my good buddy, his son, were there, and my dad was finished mowing his lawn, and my neighbor said, Timmy, and Timmy was my friend's name, he said, see that lawn over there? Mine needs to look like that. When are you going to mow my lawn? You know, I pay you to mow my lawn. And he goes, yeah, Dad. And of course, it was like knee high. He says, yeah, I really don't like to do that much. And he says, yeah, but I pay you good. And he said, maybe Brad will mow it for me. And Timmy, what will you mow it for? He says, I'll mow. He says, I'll mow it like I always do for $5. And I said, well, Mr. Hager, I'll mow it for $2. So
big cut. You went deep.
I went with a low bid. So at 7 years old, I'm mowing in complete lawns for $2. And I remember the look Timmy gave me, like, you dirty rascal, man. You outbid me. You cheated me out of my money. And
you were like, hey, doing business with me is like if you give me $1 and I give you $2 back, Mr. Hager. That's what it's like.
That's right.
It all comes to roost.
Yeah, there you go.
That was my first low bid. So, yeah, I soon learned why maybe $2 would have probably been a little bit too low. But it was fun.
Yeah, lesson learned. Moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, and in addition to bicycles, one of my projects was building the Globe Theater. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a social studies class, but it's obviously we were learning about Shakespeare and there in London and the Globe Theater. And I literally built a scaled down model. It's 4 stories high, octagonal structure, thatched roof, complete with seating and a stage. And I remember putting that together. I spent a considerable amount of time on it, probably 10 days on it. I remember bringing that up to the school, and my teacher was just floored. She kept that model in a room. She was still teaching like 15, 20 years later, and she invited me up to show that she still had it and still shows her students, 20 years later.
Wow.
What one of her students had built. So, yeah, you could say I had a penchant for the built environment pretty early on.
Well, and despite that, decided to go be a pharmacist. Fooled
the listeners.
Feel like we were telling a story here, and then curveball.
All that construction stuff was going on in my body, my brain. I guess from early on, whether there's tree houses or whatever. Losing my dad's hammer, that's another story. But yeah,
I know what the consequence of that was. I know how that story is.
You know how that turns out.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, it's just like all teenage kids, you just had to get a job. And frankly, in construction, when you're 14, 15, 16, you don't get construction jobs at that age. But I could work at a pharmacy and, work behind the counter, do sales. But primarily my job was a truck driver. And so we did deliveries. And this is back when pharmacies would actually deliver your drugs or whatever you wanted to your house. And so that was actually quite fun. So I did that as soon as I was able to drive at 16. And it was very interesting, some of the things that I delivered in total to houses. And I was put together the package, and I always have this wry grin because some of these packages contained all sorts of interesting things to be delivered. I'll leave some of those alone, but packaging them up was quite fun, and I always enjoyed looking at the person who received the package when I knocked on the door.
You're like, I know what's in here.
I know what's in here. Yes, I packed it up myself.
Lightning fast in the 72 CUDA, though, like best in town.
I was driving the company truck at the time, so that was good. But yeah, it was a way to make money. And I always watched the pharmacist do his thing. I thought this was like a pretty good job. You just pour the pills out, you measure them into a container, you put a cap on it, put a sticker on it, and make some money. I thought it's a pretty she job. And every now and then he'd be muddling something or making some kind of liquid. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So, like I'm not going to throw everybody in that bucket, but at that time I was just a stupid young boy, and going to college or preparing to go to college, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Shoot, I didn't even know what career options were. I'd seen a pharmacist.
Mm-hmm.
But my senior year, I decided I'm going to step away from pharmacy, and I said I had an opportunity to join a trim carpentry crew.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll do that. And that was my senior year in high school. And this continued, by the way, into college during the summers. But the story there was, every morning, we just part of this crew, we'd go to out some of the nicest areas like Bent Tree, and we'd put in the trim the homes, and we did everything. We built the cabinets, we built the doors, or the frames anyway, the jambs, put them in, all the running trim, and yeah, I've got fond memories of that. And sitting in a bathroom, squatted down with some oak trim, and it's 110 and humidity is 150% inside this unair conditioned house, nailing a trim to baseboard to a wall, and puffs of drywall dust, up in your face. You come out coated because you're sweating, and it was a rough job, but I learned a lot about the carpentry business. Today I can still do hardware and hang doors and fix my dad's door at the house so it doesn't stick or jam, that kind of thing. And I loved it. But the part I loved about it most was when the builder shows up at the house, and he came up to my boss, Danny, and says, well, he'd get out of his Jaguar, and he's dressed to the nines, and he's got a simple, little leaf tablet, little spiral leaf pet. It's 3 inches wide and 5 inches tall. Walks up to Danny and says, Danny, you guys are doing great. This looks great. What kind of materials you need? And, Danny would already have it prepared. Danny would rip off, I need 8 sheets of 3/4, 4x8 plywood, and so much running board feet of trim, so much crown mold. And I'd sit there and listen to all this. And the builder's name was Phil Job. And Phil would say, well, Danny, I'll have all that delivered out here in 2 days. And so he'd go and pop his trunk open. He goes, I got a little something for you boys. And he'd have a case of beer for each of us in the back of his car. And I didn't drink beer at the time. And so I donated mine, which also, when I look back on that, what was I doing? But I was not drinking at the time. But it was, I watched him drive off after that little visit and go, I'm going to be a home builder. That's what I want to do. Because he's getting ready to sell this house for, $1 million and pocket no telling what. And he had 3 others going. I said, that's the guy I want to be.
Yeah.
And so as I went to into East Texas State, there at Texas A&M Commerce now, I started off as pharmacy, still with this trim carpentry work kind of in my back pocket, but I wasn't sure the construction business would be beneficial to me in the long run. I thought maybe something more professional like a pharmacist might be better. So my first class was a chemistry class, 101. Now, mind you, I was an A student in chemistry at J.J. Pierce. I had that down. I remember there was a class of 200, and the professor walks in, and this is the first day. And he walks in his chalkboard, no dry erase, this chalkboard. And this guy starts in the upper left-hand corner without saying hello. It starts with a formula, and he covers the board. I mean, this took 10, 15 minutes for him to cover the board.
Chalkboarding in silence.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. He's setting the tone.
And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking around the room, and these kids have got their notebooks open, and they are furiously writing down this formula and other thoughts. I have no idea what it was. I'm just staring at him, and I didn't know what he was doing, where we were going. I needed the purpose. What's behind this? Do I need to write this down? I don't know. Anyway, by the time he was done, then he spun around and said, like your thoughts on this next week. In the meantime, read pages this through that. See you next week or Thursday. And everybody, slapped their notebooks done. They immediately got out, and I'm like the kid left inside the room, still wondering what just happened.
Yeah.
But I knew the answer was, I'm going right straight down to the admissions office.
See ya.
I'm out.
Yeah.
And
so this is sort of maybe not exactly, but a day one, class one, I'm out.
Yeah.
Story.
It's classic weed out course.
Yeah.
And pre-med, I had no business being pre-med. I mean, look at me. Look at my background. I got no business. You wouldn't want me behind a scalpel or anything, or even dispensing medication. But anyway, no, it was definitely a weed out time. So I said, I'm going to do this construction thing. And once again, I really didn't know all of the opportunities that the industry could afford me. I was still stuck in this residential mindset. And being a home builder, I quickly learned that, to be a home builder, you're going to need some capital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I got a couple $100. Can we start there? I don't think so. But eventually, in that business and in that curriculum, is construction technologies curriculum there at East Texas State or A&M of Commerce. You learn about all the commercial opportunities, whether it was estimator or project engineer or project manager, superintendent, field, office, all those options available to you. I got more and more interested in it, and that's when the lights started coming on for me.
Gotcha.
Both of those leaders, one the home builder and the other the teacher, tremendously impactful on your journey, right? Like one was people first back then, which I don't think was all too prominent, that like valuing his people, taking care of his people, giving you the affirmation, giving you a prize, and getting you what you needed, which made an impact. And then the dry, not people first, you want to live in formula land? It was like, no. I want to go chase that, equally impactful.
Yeah, I was so impressed with his way and presence about him. Somebody to aspire to. You're right. Wouldn't quite call him a mentor, but somebody that I hadn't seen around my house, hadn't been demonstrated at my house. But he had a way with words and was kind and professional at the same time. So, yeah, I took that with me, right in that direction, and that was good.
So I'm skipping around. We can come back to any place we want, but I got distracted on here with a career started at TJ Friday's funny resume story. Is it time to go there? We got some intermediate stops.
It does skip around a little bit, but TGI Friday. So, coming out of East Texas State, A&M Commerce, put together your resume, and I had a nice resume. I was very active in the AGC, and was president of the local chapter there at East Texas State. Became national president of the Student Association, General Associate of the AGC. Later, as a senior, was active in the school, active in my fraternity, had several positions in fraternity. It's like, the lights started coming on for me as a person. From home and going into school, you could definitely say that boy's an introvert. He's a gearhead. He never amount to much of anything. And I probably believe that of myself because I didn't know where I could go, but had my fraternity chapter advisor, Bill Murkison, who's since passed, was a mentor to me, a guy who pointed me out. I worked at a bowling alley there at the school, and one of the fraternity members came over and invited me to join the deal. But I soon learned that Bill was behind it. And Bill was one of these persons who saw the potential in people, the raw underneath the surface. Probably the only thing he'd tell from me is I was consistent. I was a hard worker. Certainly a candidate for the fraternity. There was more to be determined on all that, by the time I get there. But the guy had confidence in me, and he was the one who also encouraged me in leadership in the fraternity. He said, "Brad, you can do this. You can be sergeant at arms. Here's what's involved." And frankly, I was shocked somebody would actually have confidence in me to take on a leadership position. I didn't know what leadership was. But you got this guy saying, "Brad, you can do this." And so I took it and ran. And some would say, "Well, Brad, you turned it into a monster because now you're eating up everything that you touch." And that's kind of the way I kind of move through life, which is with purpose to try to go achieve and lead. And I found out that I enjoyed leading.
Yeah. You said something earlier about being an introvert or kind of a gearhead in high school, and no one would have ever thought that. Like, was that like? Well, let me just ask a bigger question. Why did you say that? Like, was it you thought that about yourself, or you just like if someone looked back at you, that's what they would think? Why'd you say that?
I think it was my environment and surroundings. My parents were loving, encouraging, but there was no one saying you can be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a leader of men and women. You have the capabilities, and they certainly, even their own backgrounds, they didn't probably have the tools to teach me those things.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so I did what I knew best, which was, the project guy, the puzzle guy, the introvert, take this engine apart, take this bike apart, work on your own motorcycle, fix your own parts, that kind of thing. I use that project deal, that focus, that technical ability, and that's where I was in high school. And I found a different person in large part due to just some encouragement and a vote of confidence by a couple of mentors who said, "You can do this." And even later in my career, there was a person who said, "No, Brad, you can do this."
And you probably saw it more then. Did you see what Bill was doing in that moment? Because the ultimate trademark of a mentor is to see something in you that you don't see in yourself. So like, did you think that just organically happened in yourself and you just look back and you're like, "Oh no, Bill was a part of that"?
I had to look back. He was quite subtle at it, smooth. Again, some of those traits that frankly I didn't have, but just a way about him that gave confidence, and you wanted to follow him because he was encouraging and he validated, your positive steps. Those things meant so much to me, and I did not have a lot of that growing up. And so anytime somebody validates what you do and says, "You're on your way and your next step is this, look a little further down the road, Brad, another 150 yards, and this is where we all want to be, and you can help us get there." It was so impactful to me.
One of the things it's probably on podcast bingo. I ask this question all the time, which is, did you ever have the chance to go back and tell Bill that? I know you said he's since passed, but like, did you have that moment to be like, this is what you did for me?
I didn't. And we can talk about that because I do have some regrets regarding early childhood or formative years, college years, young career years where I didn't get a chance. Mm-hmm. And I say I didn't get a chance. I had a chance. I didn't take an opportunity, frankly, because I wasn't mature enough, not confident enough in myself to say, "Dude, you don't realize what you've done for me. You don't realize how you've opened my eyes to what I could be." And so I really missed out on some opportunities there. If I have regrets, that's probably the only regrets I have. There are certain individuals and certainly a lot of people who were just passing by and through my life who made an impact that I should have taken and would today take a moment to say, "What you're doing is great. You're helping us. You're helping me. We're going to be successful in large part due to you," because I know how much that stuff meant to me.
That's a deep, not deep cut's not the right way to say it, but that's an impactful thing to say. Just for listeners to think like they have those people and they have those opportunities. Don't let them pass by.
That's right. Don't.
Yeah. Don't let your ego get in the way. Ultra competitiveness get in the way. Both of those got in the way. We were talking about that off air, and both those got in the way of me doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Until recently.
And I was too shy. I didn't feel like I owned enough stock or trade to give props or kudos to someone. I felt like I was just a youngster still absorbing. It was such a mistake not to recognize that in my younger days. I'll get back to the resume story though, because
hold on, because I'm going to linger on shy because there's a lot of things about people's story that don't jive back together, and like the idea of you being shy in the face of being a gearhead and in a band, like those things don't jive.
They don't jive.
Yeah. So say more about that.
I'm a bit of a dichotomy because probably in my core of my being, I want to be a party animal. I want to be the life of the party. I want to be the drummer in the band.
Mm-hmm.
I want roadies. I want the hottest car in town. I wanted to be looked at but if you sat down and have a conversation with me, I was actually a pretty shy individual.
You think that's, I know this is an impossible question to answer, but I'm asking anyway. You think that's just how you're wired? Or do you think that's part of like growing up in a family that treated or acted or didn't, I don't know what the right words are.
I'm not sure. I think it's partly environment, the way I grew up. And it was partly also who I was. And in some ways I still am a shy person, but I do fire up on the business side though. I get competitive. That competitive thing comes out. I want to win. I want to strive. I want to see everybody succeed. I love the team aspect of working together in a group of men and women to go accomplish something or go build a building. That really gets me fired up. And that's where the introvert goes away and the shyness goes away and the leadership failures go away. I just step up and step in because I'm so passionate about it. I'm one of these lucky people who just loves what I do or what I did. Mm-hmm. For 43 years, I loved it. I loved it the day I retired. I told everybody at the retirement party, I said, I'm one of these fortunate people who just loved every minute of their job. And I know folks who can't say that. I know somebody who's very close to me said, I hated every minute of my job.
For the entire career?
For their entire career. And I just can't imagine. But personally, you probably would say I'm a little bit more reserved. A lot of people would characterize me as, or a lot of people have told me, Brad, you're steady, you're consistent. You don't, your amp meter doesn't, hit the pins very often. I've never seen you get rattled, although I have. but I hide that crazy sometimes, I guess, and I prefer a more steady path.
Man, was it? We had a guest on. I think it was Mike Bassett, who said at the end of all of it, if people just said he's solid, like that would be the best compliment ever. And that steady is very similar to solid. Just that's it. I am reliable. I am consistent. I am steady. I am solid. Those are phenomenal adjectives.
My wife would say, well, he's predictable too. And I always take offense to that. No, I'm not predictable, but of course I am.
Yeah. But here's my next step. And I don't need to tell you.
You always say you're not predictable.
Yeah, exactly. The power of consistency, you don't have to have it figured out. If you keep showing up, you will figure it out. Yeah. I'm learning a lot of life lessons as we go in this journey and many other journeys of life. And consistency is such a powerful tool. Like even walking into that youth ministry journey where I don't have like Bible verses memorized in my head and all that. And when I was doubting myself when I showed up for the first time, the youth pastor said, our word of the season is consistency. If you could be that for me, you're everything. And I'm like, I got consistency. I could bring that to the table. You tell me the scripture and I'll be consistent.
That's right.
And you just don't know that early in your walk of life, how powerful consistency can be.
See, that's something that my mom and dad did teach me was consistency. And they were always there, very consistent, very dedicated, whether it was church and our faith or his work ethic. Watching my dad's work ethic, I probably mimicked that a lot. My son says he still remembers as a boy hearing those hard-soled shoes come down the hall every morning about 6:30 as I was, stepping out for work. He calls it the click, clack, click, clack, click, clack moment. And he said, Dad, I don't know if I could ever be as consistent as you. He said, I heard that 5 days a week, sometimes 6. And he said, you were always so consistent. And I guess I was, and dedicated for the cause, and whether it was for family or, a career or just something that I love to do. I'm pretty dedicated.
That's powerful. It's multiple generations of teaching through action.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to be consistent. It's you're observing your surroundings. You're like, man, they just keep showing up.
Yep.
Powerful.
Exactly.
Well, we took a long way around the block to get to the resume story, but lay it on me here.
So coming out of school, I had a lot to put in my resume, and I had a decent resume. And I said, I'm going to do something special. So I had something typeset. You guys know what typesetting is?
I'm learning it from trying to publish a book.
Yeah.
So, nobody typesets a resume, but I had some nice cardstock or paper stock, and then had my resume typeset. But it was, and you can't see this obviously on this podcast, but it was in a trifold type scenario. So on the cover, you flip it open, and there's my
brochure of sorts.
It was like a brochure, exactly. So I sent this around, and I remember interviewing several general contractors, J.W. Bateson and Beck, and several others back in the day. And in the upper right-hand corner of these men's desks was always a stack of Texas A&M, College Station, building construction resumes. And they were all identical. 8.5 by 11, your picture in the corner, very military style, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these guys had impeccable resumes. And it was a very formidable school, right, to be competing against when you're talking about construction technology degrees. And it was a stack of 25, 30 resumes. They said, well, Brad, and he'd pick up this stack of papers, and he'd say, let me see if I can find your resume. And so they're flipping there, and oftentimes mine would fall to the floor because it's in a trifold, like a pamphlet.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy said, I thought this was just a sales pamphlet, and so it was just.
You are correct.
Yeah. Turns out
it is.
Yeah. Thanks for noticing.
But I think mine was often shuffled to the back or lost as with a brochure, thrown out with a junk mail or something like that. I had the dickens of a time getting on with a general contractor. I finally landed a job, though, with TGI Fridays. Ironically, as I finished my career as an owner's rep.
Mm.
And so, we'd fly around the country, a lot of projects in Ohio, Pennsylvania, building TGI Fridays restaurants. And do y'all remember Dalt's restaurant?
No.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Dalt's restaurant too, as a change. But anyway, that was my first job, and I liked it. And, they told you everything you needed to know about what's in a TGI Friday restaurant and how one puts together. There's obviously a general contractor involved, and as the owner, would just go out there and do inspections and stuff. One of the best parts about my job was
endless apps.
Endless apps?
Yeah, it wasn't that
appetizers. He was going for the dad zinger in there.
Dad zinger. Wasn't that TGI Fridays bit for a while?
Probably was.
Yeah, sorry. That joke didn't hit at all. Anyway.
The best part I remember was the discounts. I had great discounts. But anyway, the best part about my job was, which is a pretty good story, is we go into these towns, and part of my job was to distress the wood. So I don't know if you recall, TGI Fridays restaurants were built with heavy trim, wood trim, back in the day. A lot of beadboard, wainscoting, and trim everywhere. Crown mold. As heavy as like old pub style construction. Part of my job as an owner's rep, we go into these cities where we built these Fridays restaurants, and when they're completely finished, I'd bring a 1/2-inch heavy galvanized chain with me, about 4 feet long. This is a big, heavy chain. And these union carpenters had put this woodwork together. And part of my job was to take this chain and beat the ever-loving crap out of this wood wainscot. And I go in there and start slinging this chain. And on 2 different jobs, they had to restrain the union carpenters from coming after me. And I actually eventually had to, we'd paper the windows and move the workers out for me to do. The general contractor said, we're not going to let you do this with any workers here, even though I was representing the owner. But had to make that new wood look old.
Right.
That was kind of a fun part of the job.
It feels like there's this nouveau thing about how they have these like smash rooms. Have you seen this? It's like warehouses with like old computers and TVs and all this stuff in there, and you take a bat and you just go smash. Yeah. People pay money to do what you got paid to do.
Sounds like fun. I had a good time.
Yeah. I would have solved a lot of my issues if I was in a, what is it called? Like a breaking
smash
room?
room or
smash
something like
room?
this. I don't know what it's called. Something like that. It's very popular in Asia. They just go crush everything. Anyway, sorry. The second joke that didn't actually land within a span of 2 minutes.
Keep it going. It's awesome.
Keep it going. Yeah.
I'm not helping you. I'm like, 2 generations behind you. So,
I feel like that endless apps thing. Look, that should have
It was, his answer was relatable. Discounts on food.
Discounts. Yeah. Okay. So, there you go. Yeah.
Which could lead to endless apps. You're saved.
I'm safe. Whew. All right. Where do we go from here? Because I'm sort of out of sorts with my jokes, having not landed a couple times. But we were telling the story about sort of walking through your career, and that resume was where we diverged.
Yeah, at TGI Fridays as an owner's rep, I decided that really I wanted to get back to that contracting thing. I wanted to be a builder, and so I had to be a general contractor. So had a short stint at a company called Bramcon, which really didn't go all that well. I was an estimator. But, those folks who know Bramcon and the organization, the man who ran it, his reputation preceded him. But let's just suffice it to say I didn't belong because I apparently was not wanted when I was hired by the chief estimator. The chief estimator wanted me, but owner did not. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so it was a big black eye. I thought this is a poor start. And it was right during recessionary times where the RTC had taken back a bunch of property, and so development was down. But I wasn't sure I'd be able to get a job. I actually had a sick child at the time, and suddenly found myself unemployed. It was a rough go. But I got picked up by Jackson Shaw Construction Company. This is back when Jackson Shaw had a construction company, and it was the launch of a contracting career. And we were a small organization building small industrial buildings. So in a short amount of time, I went from project engineer to project manager. I was project managing my first 20,000 foot tilt wall warehouse by the 9 months of arriving at Jackson Shaw. So lots of learning experiences there, but that's where that started. Went on to Dalmac Construction Company, and also Dalmac is now gone. Unfortunately, family-run business, but was there for quite a few years from 87 to 94, and built a lot of big buildings with Dalmac all over the state of Texas. Probably the one that you guys would probably most recognize is what was called the Northern Telecom B&R buildings, which now is RealPage there at the corner of Campbell and Central. Yeah. The claim to fame on that large project was we had 2 Liebherr cranes that ran on railroad tracks. And so the cranes would shift during the evening or early morning. And I'd have so many contractor buddies come by and say, now, look, I know this crane was centered, right down here 100 feet, yet just yesterday at this location, and now it's 250 feet further this way. What is going on over there? And to this day, I'm not sure I'm aware of another project that we had put cranes on wheels, but railroad track, if you will.
That's very unique.
Yeah, it was very cool, and great project. It was probably one of the bigger ones when I was at Dalmac. My last project as a general contractor was the Texas A&M Rec Sports and Auditorium down in College Station. And so if you've been there, it's a wonderful facility. 5, 6 different skin systems, very complex, obviously an auditorium that was in a crawl space, very difficult conditions down there in that part of town. Black gumbo gets wet and stays wet for months after just a 1-inch rain. You can't dry it out. A lot of our structures were on carton form, so it was difficult. Yeah. And we were having a tough go. We were understaffed. by design because we just didn't have a lot of general conditions. I was down there basically with myself and a project engineer and a superintendent building this massive structure, and that was the extent of our staff.
Mm-hmm.
And hard times. I stayed in an apartment. I left my kids on Monday morning. I had 2 young kids at the time on Monday morning, and they cried, when I left. And Friday when I came home, they almost didn't know who I was because they'd learned to get along without me. So the whole thing was quite difficult. And the apartment was well unappointed. I remember a bed and a chair, a couch, a TV, three pots and pans, and a couple of glasses, plasticware, no art, no. You can't call it a home. But anyway, it was a pretty miserable place to even lay your head. And I remember.
You're talking about College Station generally, or the apartment?
Yeah. There, that one landed.
Got it.
Strike
out. Got it. Finally.
Yeah, careful now. I'm a big Aggie fan.
No, I just figured that was a good time to try out another joke. Yeah.
It is a good one. But I remember being heartsick, or just sick at the heart about the whole situation, being away from family. And I remember many nights laying in bed, Bible in my chest, going, God, you got to get me out of here. This is tough. I don't know if my mind, my body, my family, I'm not even sure I can finish this project. And owner of the company came in the following week and got me in the car. He was not happy about, our progress and some of the stuff that had happened. And of course, talked to him about the shortage of general conditions to get the thing done. Suffice it to say, I had to drive around in his car, and he proceeded to light me up about this whole project. And I was thinking to myself silently that, well, it's good news here because you'll never have to have this conversation again. And I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go, but I knew I would not be there any longer because I guess I just had more than I could take. So I was unable to finish that project, but had so many great projects, in that time period that we'd put together. But anyway, left the general contracting business, and I was on a church building committee with Tommy Parrott, who was with the Staubach Company at the time. And I told him what had happened, and he was very interested in me coming in and talking to him. And he had an opening there with the Staubach Company. And at the time, don't tell anyone this as I secretly speak into this microphone.
Hundreds of people listening in.
I was not a Cowboy fan at the time.
Oh, no.
The Cowboys had broken my heart with Green Bay back in the day and the Ice Bowl, and it's been weighing on my shoulders ever since. So going to work for Roger Staubach, I thought, okay, Captain America, I get it.
Yeah.
And we'll see how this goes. But what an organization. There'll never be another organization like it. They had a small design and construction group that Tommy led. Tommy picked me up. Obviously, I was an experienced builder at that point, so I was able to translate my general contracting knowledge to work on behalf of tenants or owners or any user of real estate. And so we were doing interior finish out, on behalf of our clients. We were doing some ground up development management, and it was the start of a great, long owner's rep, third-party project management career for me.
I love the essence of the answered prayer there, right? Like Bible on your chest, laying up that night, and then the answered prayer starts off by getting a little worse.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, wait, are you not listening to me? But of course he's listening. It's just not your way. It's his way. And he's got to stir some other things first. Before you walk into that next good season. I always love hearing that part of it.
He said, here, Brad, you're having a hard time making this decision. Let me help you.
That's right.
Let me send in my agent.
Let me sprinkle some more adversity there.
And it was done. No, but that was a change for the better. Obviously, my travel just dropped tremendously. My kids were thrilled. My wife was happy. And so it turned out to be really good. It's been great. As you know, Staubach was purchased by Jones Lang LaSalle later, and I remained with JLL for another 4 years, and during that time period, did a large project for Deloitte University out in Westlake. It was the biggest, quietest development that no one had ever heard about, but it was immediately after the 07-08 crash. This project was in design, and a lot of us wasn't sure this project would go.
Yeah.
But in Deloitte's wisdom, they said, this is a good time to build. And they did. They built on the cheap, if so to speak, right? Because prices had dropped. And it was great. It's been a wonderful project. And we're currently, at least Cushman Wakefield is doing the second phase, which is another very large, another 600 rooms, more training, another social venue. It's a massive project. Massive.
Fun fact about Deloitte, that's the project that got me moved here from Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. In May of 2010. That's when it was at least awarded to the glazing company I was with, and it planted their feet here to, all right, make this a location they're going to invest into, which then moved me out here. And that was the first one I was on. Just like, have you ever been to Deloitte? It's like a third of a mile wide or something.
No,
like
I've heard you talk about it though. Like is it curved?
It's a hidden gem in Westlake.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a quarter mile long, 4 stories, lake, social venue, which is a barn, party barn, if you will. It's great. Love my Deloitte family out there. The customer, the client has been a fan for quite some time. Obviously, they followed me from JLL to Cushman Wakefield, and turned out really well. Picked up the second phase, and it's much, much, much more expensive than the first one. Can you imagine from 08 to 2022? Yeah.
Shocker.
That's a wild ride. One of the mentors that you mentioned early in the prep sheet seems to be at Staubach. But what did they do to impact your career life, all the things?
Yeah, so leaving the general contracting community when I was at Dalmac, I was still in the mode of, I was the executor, right? Hire me, put me in, coach. I can build anything. I wanted to build things bigger, better, faster. I had an appetite, but what I didn't have an appetite for was anything sales related. It was somebody else's job, to go find a piece of business, source the business, hunt it, kill it, bring it in the door, and you just give it to me when you're ready, and I'll make sure it gets built correctly, and anything else was not my part. And so when I was asked on several occasions at Dalmac to be a part of a pitch or a presentation, I went, but begrudgingly.
Yeah.
And with an attitude that this is not my job. Huge mistake. At that time, I hadn't learned to create my value or know my value to the client, or even to how to express it.
I get it.
I had value. I was very good at what I did, but I didn't know how to articulate it, nor did I have any proof statements or case studies or any information or anything in my head that I could use at a moment's notice to communicate to somebody that I was capable, and our firm was capable of doing this. So at Dalmac, it obviously didn't serve me very well, but when I came to Staubach, our executive vice president, her name is Alicia Holt, who eventually became Alicia Holt Ragusa, marrying Jake. Jake was with KDC fame. They're both now, I think, retired in the Austin area, but she was a pivoting turn in my career as it relates to my own thoughts about my own self, about how I could take what I knew, my knowledge, and turn it into a presentation, a pitch, or just a conversation, one of confidence. And it starts, you got to know Alicia. She's from Dumas, Texas. Okay. So she's from the country, but she was driving, 7 Series BMW around town as a commercial real estate broker, and arguably one of the most successful commercial real estate brokers in town. And after being there for maybe a year at the Staubach company, she pretty quickly figured out that when she needed expertise regarding the built environment and construction, whether it's schedule information or budget or somebody to go look at a building and evaluate the intrinsic value or the intrinsic cost burden of putting your space there. She says, this Brad guy may know something. So I started going with her on some pitches, and I remember sitting in her car, driving to the pitch, and she would be teaching me. She says, here's our angle. Here's what we're going to do. This is what I think. This is how you can help me. You just talk about this. You talk about that. And I, again, here's another person who said, oh, Brad, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen you. You've got what this takes. And that's all I needed was that bit of confidence. Now, I more stories about her. You got to know she's a salt of the earth woman, but she said, she was telling me, be careful when you go for your water. Pick this cup, not that one, because this is the one I spit in. So she was always also chewing on her way to the pitch. Alicia, if you're listening, to forgive me for telling that story, but that's.
And how many times did you drink out of the wrong cup?
I was real careful not to get into the wrong cup. But she's a salt of the earth woman. Told it just exactly the way it was, and was that direct with me about my capabilities. We had some training there at the Staubach Company. Jerry Vass, Ted Cagle, Alan, I forgot Alan's last name, but listening skills, presentation skills. Jerry Vass was very much a military style break everything you know about how you sell or pitch and turn you. And it was aimed at the brokers, but some of us construction guys got to get in there. This is a formidable time for me. I'm listening to stuff I've never heard about before.
Oh, yeah.
Why would I be interested in this? But realizing now I'm part of a sales organization as much as I am a building organization. And it took off for me. Once again, I gobble this stuff up like it was ice cream and absorbed as much because I'm learning again. And I quickly learned that I needed proof statements about what I was getting ready to say that I was capable of doing. So you heard me earlier say on my elevator pitch that I can save client 5 to 10% of overall project cost. Well, it just begs the question for the listener to say, how? Prove it. And I carried with me from then on out some proof statements, some case studies, and some examples of where just in change order review or whatever, I was able to save my client a lot of money. This was earth-changing for me because suddenly as a technical guy, rather than being braggadocious and saying I'm the next best thing to slice bread, I was able to back up what I felt about my own capabilities by saying, here are some examples. And this was earth-changing for me in terms of presenting a technical experience to a listener who didn't know much about design and construction. And suddenly the lights came on. It made sense. I was able to boil some of the stuff down into something simple to articulate. And it was just it was a big difference. So my big mistake was thinking I should not be interested in being part of sales. But I do know this, that if you're a student of the game, student of your game, whatever that game is. So let's just say it's project management here. And you absorb this, you love it, you breathe it, you absorb it, you learn it, you cultivate it, and then be able to articulate your value. The most highly compensated and successful people in this industry are people who can not only execute the work, but also sell the work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And for the longest, I thought, well, all I needed to be is an executor. No. The lights turned on. My career took off when I was able to actually articulate and sell it.
I love that. If you're on the business development side, the only thing stopping you from trying to gather somebody like Brad for your project interview is your ego. Like, I got this. No. Bring them, because if I'm you, right, interviewing a GC or a subcontractor for a development you're about to do, yeah, I could good words from the sales or business development or the head executive that better have their stuff together.
Right.
But like, who's building this day to day?
Yep.
Who's going to be my person in the foxhole with me?
Yep.
And what do they have to say?
Right.
And so if you want to know who the salesperson is, it's them.
In the 90s and the aughts, I think corporate America started turning on to that there was a lot of bait and switch going on with people being proposed to be your project leadership team. And then suddenly you see somebody else at the project. And so they asked the question just direct, Brad, are you going to be my project manager? And then, the answer was mostly always, yes, it's me. And being able at that time to give confidence that I could execute as well as articulate or sell, stand in front of a board and explain to them why we're running under budget or behind schedule or over budget, or we need some assistance here, or we need a decision there. They felt confident that I could do it. So it was really that time there at Staubach, JLL, it was really a game changer for me, career-wise.
Yeah, the power of mentors. We just keep going back to that over and over and over, the power of small moments. That just somebody, you mentioned that Alicia was very direct in her demeanor,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, a superpower when it comes to mentoring somebody, because if you know they're direct everywhere else, when they tell you, you got this, like they're not just blowing smoke, you got this.
She did. She had a lot of confidence. And much like my dad, it was, as a mentor, you kind of watch their actions and how they go about their daily business. I remember several times I get a phone call in the morning. It's about 7:30 and I'm hearing, Brad, it's Alicia. She says, for today's meeting, we want to, I said, Alicia, what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm on the treadmill. I'm sorry. And this went on. And she would tell me all the prep for the day and for the call while she's sweating and, running at a fast pace. And I thought to myself, that is a dedicated woman. So by example and by doing, just her aggressiveness and just dedication to her craft, committedness. I'd watch her open a newspaper, and this is back when we still had newspapers.
Yeah,
in
tell
our
us.
offices.
Please explain what that is.
And she'd take a marker and she'd say, "Here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. So and so just cut 200 jobs. Why is that an opportunity? Well, they don't need as much space. Let's go in there and see if we can help downsize them.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an opportunity." And somebody bought so-and-so. And she would take a newspaper and she would find 15 opportunities between the front section and the business page. She'd find 15 opportunities, hand them out to brokers. And that's how I eventually started learning to source stuff too. Just the creativity, just the higher level of thinking. She was so good at that. So just by action, watching her, she was a great mentor. And
I'm sure we're going to interloop Cushman Wakefield,
Yeah.
but in that reaching up, reaching down mentality, you have people pouring into you. Eventually you start pouring into others. And so was it some of those tips and tricks, the what to do's, the what not to do's of the people you started lifting up in your career?
Yeah. I was starting to appreciate, some of the benefits and traits that I had learned from others. And I felt like it was important as a team that I start sharing them. In latter part of my JLL days, I was able to manage several people and I was able to contribute at our staff meetings. And I would often do presentations just to learn and help the group learn and educate. And I would take a subject and we'd deep dive into some deep dive thing that I go into that, like insurance or contracts or for Pete's sake, some of the driest stuff, but I would try to float it up to some big bullet points. So they say, here's what we need to focus on, make sure that we cover. And so I wanted to pour back in, and I enjoyed pouring back in first I guess I was a pirate of information and deliverables, and I always wanted the best deliverables. I always wanted the best of class documents. I wanted the best pitch decks, the best proposals, and I wanted them to be pretty. I wanted them to be professional. And so I'd keep these and work on these and perfect them, and I'd share them with not only my Dallas team, but we're a global organization. I had people calling me saying, "Hey, can you share your budget spreadsheet with me because it's gold." And I started having fun at being a resource, kind of a go-to guy.
Yeah.
And I love being a resource. I like being a resource in business, but I also like being a resource in life. after 43 years, you learned a few things in the business. And so I guess I took that to the next level. When I left JLL, I was able to start our own third-party project management team, design and construction consulting team there at Cushman Wakefield. And I took that to the next level. Documentation, proposals, things of that nature, just documents. It's all technical. It's all in the weeds stuff. It's the stuff that really at the core of my heart I'm very good at. I decided I want to share it. I want to share it with my team. I want to share it with the rest of the Cush Wake team. Try to make everybody better.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. And being that resource to people, especially the employees that I hired as I built that team there at Cushman Wakefield, I think they enjoyed it because I hope I was generous with that information. If I wasn't, shame on me, but I tried to share as much as possible. Some of them would probably say, Brad, you shared a little bit too much. After a while, you could have just shut up.
It's called oversharing, like we were doing earlier off air.
Yeah.
But that's probably been the funnest part in the latter days. My daughter said, she goes, or my son said, Dad, you're now in the sage part of your career. And I said, what's a sage? He goes, well, you're like the old sage. You just kind of share what you know. You're not really out to learn or build the next big thing. And I built everything that I wanted to build, but sharing it with others was quite fun.
Yeah.
And watching them be successful was even more fun. And watching them turn in from just a young college student to now a project manager and soon to be some of these folks that we've built up, I feel confident could run any office. They're that good. So shout out to my Cush Wake peeps over there. You guys rock. So they're a great team. So I really enjoyed that right up to the last minute.
It's one of those awesome deals where you're 20 years from now, one of them are going to go on a podcast or share a story, and you're going to be the Alicia of their story, and that's where we make this legacy and exponential impact in life, because you leaned into that. I feel like we're missing it a lot in construction, where people are holding the cards to the vest when it comes to that information. We got to pass it down. We got to be willing and excited to do it because of what you see. You see that person start latching onto it and believing in themselves. I promise you it's more rewarding than seeing yourself go through that. When you can see somebody else starting to pick up those tools and learn and believe in themselves, it fills the tank so much. Yeah.
And it's try to teach the balance between the technical and the sales aspect of what we do. Try to make everybody like that with those capabilities. And many of them go at their own pace. Some have more appetite for one or the other.
Right.
But again, the most successful people, I think, can do both.
Well, so let's, I don't know if this is the right time or not, but think back through that, right? So as you look back on that career that you were so lucky to love every minute of it, except for that one time in College Station.
Yeah.
Second shot. Like, what was it? Like, what is it that you've learned? What was it that you were teaching? What is it that you remember most fond? Like, what is it sort of on this side of the deck that you think, I want to say that out loud so people can grow and learn, or I want to make sure people know that's what I was stood for? What was it?
Well, if you're asking how I'd like to be remembered or what people would say about me or the organization, I'd like them to think that I was firm but fair, dedicated to my craft, but they enjoyed working with me and my team on a team basis, because I think it's a lot more fun to work as a team than it is as an individual. So much more fun. My own self-evaluation of myself, I know I'm an in-the-weeds guy. I'm a technical guy. Chris Scott with Scott and Reed told me, he goes, Blakenship, he says, I remember I was on a cruise with you because our wives were in the same company, and so this was like a quota cruise. So Chris and I did a lot of cruises together. And he said at a young age, he says, you're young in your career. He says, we're all having a party and drinking margaritas. And he said, I look over there, you're sitting in an outdoor lounger reading an AIA contract. And that's truth. I was. So I'm a bit of a technical geek, and I geek out on that kind of stuff, but because I want to understand, I want to have that knowledge, and I want to keep, and it's in the weeds. And sometimes people say, you need to lift the plane up, Brad. You're hitting the treetop, into the trees here where we need to lift the plane up. But I don't think that's true. I'm glad I was in the weeds. I'm glad I was a technician, but I'm more glad that I learned more of the people side, the presentation side, the sales side, the reason why you would buy this from me. Or, if I were to give you a cost benefit analysis, or that you would agree that, or I could influence you to make a decision.
Yeah.
Never considered myself a man of influence. I really didn't. So, but I love having the technical chops to back it up in case I was challenged. I think I was mostly fearful of being challenged, then not having the answer, and then aha. I remember one time I was in a presentation at, I think it was Rockwell Industries, so engineering outfit. I think now long gone, I think. But we were using, instead of select fill for this building pad, we were using crushed limestone for a 4-foot building pad, and that was a little unusual. And the engineer there, it's for a large room, when I was explaining the cost savings that we had for using this product versus select fill, that we were going to save X amount of dollars. And he challenged the logic of that. And he challenged my credibility and just, on what basis do you state that? What knowledge or education do you have? What certification do you have to say that? He said this in front of 30, 35 people. I'm the project manager. I didn't have an answer to that question. And I was just mortified. So I fixed it. I became, if you're familiar with the AIC, American Institute of Contractors, you can be a certified professional constructor if you take the exam. So I said, I needed that. I needed that card. I need that certification. So I was one of the early adopters of this certified professional constructor program. In fact, I think I'm number 66 in the entire program. But now I've got the card in case, and I wish that guy would come back and challenge me one more time so I can say, yes, here's my card, certified professional constructor. But
I'm calling another meeting. We're off that job. Don't care.
It's like that Seinfeld episode where they're trying to get, he's trying to get the person to ask the same question so he can say the jerk store called.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that's the setup there.
You're their all-time bestseller. He gets trumped after all that time.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna pick at that just a minute. The idea though that like being worried about being called out and all that, like why? Like why do you have that worry? Or is that inherent to the profession? Or like dig on that a little bit.
It's inherent to who I am. I want to be accurate. I want to be true. I want to be accurate. I don't want to be asked why and not have an answer. That really petrifies me, but it motivates me. It motivates me to learn my craft, know my stuff, get into the weeds, understand it, and then be able to turn around and articulate it.
I mean, I would say the reason I asked, I was curious what your answer would be, but I was anticipating that was it, because what I wanted, the thing I was thinking was that it's the sign of a consummate professional, right? Like translate this. I'll give you a basketball reference, but you don't think that Michael Jordan took thousands of shots because when it came time to make one to win the game, you wanted to make it.
Absolutely.
And this is why you live in the weeds, because when it's game time and you got to call the shot, you want to make it.
Absolutely. It's a great point. Great point, Stuart.
Yeah. But some people don't feel comfortable in the weeds or don't want to get in the weeds as a defense mechanism, right? Like if I get into the weeds and I still don't know the answer, then I failed. There's some sort of like inherent reticence to living in expertise. And I don't know exactly, that's why I kind of poked to the question, because I don't know what it is for everybody. But there is some vulnerability in that deep dive too, because you also run the risk, you're like, no, I am an expert and I was still wrong, or so there's some additional vulnerability there. But in any event, I think that's the sign of the consummate professional.
Yeah, I use the term being a student of the game. I think that's what, at the core of it, is where I would recommend everybody try to be. Student of the game means you're learning. You're constantly learning. And you can be wrong, right? As a student, you can be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Drive your hypothesis. This is what I think. You can learn otherwise, but you learn from it and you take it.
Mm-hmm.
You had a flawed RFP and a flawed statement in an RFP. It turns out to bite you in the you-know-where. You change it. You don't use the same tired document on the next the deal. And you have to be dedicated and devoted to just the craft in order to perfect the game. I don't think anybody ever perfects the game, but
at least caring and dedication will allow you to reflect on a mistake or error or one of those humiliating experiences and be like, that ain't happening again.
Exactly.
You know,
School of Hard
but
Knocks.
it takes a level of care and dedication to have that mindset.
Well, and then to bring it back to the point you made earlier, then you know, like, boy, I made that mistake on an RFP, or I didn't know the answer as to why we were using that material. I now know it. And when you see somebody else coming alongside you and they say, well, why is that comma even in that document? You can say, I'll tell you why it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to like iterate your learning process across multi-generational expertise where you can say, so instead of just grabbing the RFP and using it, you're saying the comma's there because of X. Now they know that, and then they can fix and tweak and pass down and better and better and better, which is kind of back to the point is when you're the source of information, that's one of the great things about that is now I can tell you, here's the form and here's why I got it and here's how I use it and here's why I actually have that column in the budget spreadsheet because one time X out, whatever.
One of my other ahas working in a sales environment is if you're a technical guy and in the weeds, you can be frowned upon, if not sometimes shamed because, no, we're not taking him or her because I don't want to get in the weeds with this client and this pitch goes south, right? So there's this delicate balance of knowing your stuff, but choosing when and how to deliver it.
Yeah.
And this is where you got to get out of the weeds, right? Lift the nose of the plane up, understand where we're going with this presentation and deliver at the proper times. And that sales component is so key. I think one of my regrets, one of the things I wish I had done is I should have taken a Dale Carnegie course or better yet, maybe Toastmasters, because those are great organizations, training grounds for learning how to do just that. I know several who did and it was a game changer for them. And I'd highly recommend it. So I would say if you struggle there, get some help because without that training I got at Staubach by those, I mentioned 2 or 3 men who gave these sales training deals. One was listening skills, one was presentation skills, one was just overall approach to business development. Game changers for me. Really enlightened me as to how business is won.
And when you're trying to go get work, a lesson learned for me, and which is why I bring some diversity to the table for an interview, I forget sometimes I'm not the pilot of that plane. So I don't get to make the call if we get in the weeds or not. They make that call. Yep. Mm-hmm. So if we show up and I'm thinking I have control over this and I'm like, we're not going in the weeds. And then question 1, this dude's all weeds. That's where we're going to live the entire interview. It's like, I'll need to follow up with you on that one. That one, action item, that's a great one. And all of a sudden we didn't do anything in the interview. Like sometimes you're not the pilot.
Action item, that's a great one. It's hilarious.
Oh, this dude knew nothing.
Yeah, this guy knows nothing.
I had several brokers take me on a presentation or a pitch, and it was a casual deal. And they take me along for the ride. And by this time I'd learned when to speak and when not to speak, when to use that and when not to. And question 1 right out of the client's mouth. I'm concerned about how my business will continue to operate during this design and construction process. What can you assure me of how that you won't disrupt my business as part of it? And the entire hour and a half was spent on the built environment, the design and the construction. The broker's over there twiddling his fingers, and the client wouldn't come off of it, or the prospect. And of course, I get in the car with the broker later. Oh God, I'm so glad you're with me. I couldn't have answered any of those questions.
Did you actually crack your knuckles before you got started? Like, all right.
Those were fun meetings, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been, of course, many meetings that I never spoke. I was
Right.
never asked to speak.
You were there, prepared.
I was prepared and ready, but never asked to. And I kept my mouth shut.
Mm.
Boy, and I'm sure we've said it here, and it's one of the things I'm trying to teach my kids is just like reading the room.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you have to be able to read the room. You have to know when it's your time, and when it's your time, and when it's just like it is an orchestra being played with no music, and being able to conduct it to successfully get to the end is just a killer super skill. So that's
You bet.
anyway. I don't
Takes
know
time.
You
Takes
bet.
time to figure out and getting over yourself. So many meetings I'd walk into and be like, I got to say something in this. It's like, no, you don't. It'd actually be better if you didn't.
But I had lots of stuff I wanted to vomit on you.
That's right. I had my agenda.
Well, and I'll put two of y'all's ideas together. You don't even know go together, but Kevin commonly will say like, you got to get the reps. You got to get the reps or whatever that is. And you had just said like, I had gone along on enough meetings that I knew something to that effect. So there's a synergy of you don't learn any of these things without doing them. Sometimes you just have to tag along and not do anything so you can learn how to do them. And then it involves someone asking you to come along with you. So it's a real like triangular interplay to make it very strong to get all the people going and all the people taught and all the lessons learned and all of it moving at the same time.
Absolutely.
So for you guys out there who are growing, leading, like bring folks along, let them get the reps with you. And they don't have to say anything. They can just be along for the ride, just learning to read the room or learning to know when the technical expertise comes up, etc. Like, bring folks along for the ride. Yeah.
I have one piece of advice and I tell this to everybody who's new to a presentation room. And I even ask contractors. I prepare contractors and architects who are, getting ready to interview for an opportunity. Said, here's the deal. If you bring someone to the presentation, make sure they speak. I don't care who they are or what they do. Make sure they speak. Okay. Nobody stays quiet. And if you want to prep them on what it is they should say or be prepared to say, if they have an opportunity, and they don't need to vomit it, but if they have an opportunity, it is 5 minutes of passion. You have to be able to articulate over 5 minutes why you're passionate about what you do. I don't care if it's because, you like a clean job site. And your whole shtick is clean job sites or safe job sites, and therefore productive job sites. We're going to have a safe job site. I had a superintendent. He owned that world, and in 5 minutes, I thought he was going to stand on the table talking about a safe job or a clean job site.
Mm-hmm.
And when the door closed, the client looked at me and he says, I don't know what that guy was saying or why he was saying it, but I want that.
Yeah, for sure. They could feel it.
Because he was about to come across the table at us about his passion for a clean job site. And it could be anything. But it's why you put your pants on in the morning. It's what your mother probably told you you're very good at. But talk about that because it'll be so easy for you to talk about what you offer to this team.
Mm-hmm.
I get excited about this. This is what I love. I like checking, rebar shop drawings, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Bring that passion and tell us why it's important to the job, to the success of this project. And then people will see it. They'll see the passion and say, I want some of that, even if they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a great story.
I love it.
I don't know what that guy was saying, but I want some of that. It is awesome.
We're doing a lot of looking back, and we're going to do some looking forward here in a minute. But let's get to the current moment of retirement. It's like, when did it get on your radar where you're like, this is it. It's ran its course. It's time for this next phase.
I've been thinking about it for the last couple of years. And like a good project manager, you plan everything to the hilt.
Yeah.
And I wanted to plan.
Do you have a spreadsheet? No, it's a joke. Obviously,
it is
you
a
did.
flow chart, actually. I'd planned it and said, this might be a possibility. I might can do this. Financially, I knew I'd be there likely unless things cratered. But was I ready? Was my team ready? And because I wasn't going to leave the team without a successor, and in a good place to move on from me. And so, like a good project manager, I was very deliberate about those things and those steps in terms of planning that succession. And if everything went well, I thought, green lights, I'm going to do this. And as time moved on and I was getting closer to a date, I put a date on a calendar probably 6 months in advance.
Publicly or just
No,
you?
very privately.
Okay.
Just me, my direct boss out in Seattle, Brian Jaffe. Shout out, Brian. And so the guy who was going to be my successor, Kyle Griffith, who was just a wonderful man, who needs to be one of the next guests probably. Kyle was going to take the leadership, and he knew as well. And then I just asked that, please keep this quiet. I never know if I'm going to change my mind because, retirement's a bit of a scary thing, especially when you love what you do. And so, but it worked out really well, and it stayed quiet, and I was able to, we'll say, retire on my own terms. I was able to, at a Christmas party with my team, reveal what I was going to do. And between some hugs and some laughs and some tears, we all celebrated all of that. I was very confident in Kyle's ability to take on basically the shop was in great condition. Our P&L's in great condition. We were ready to go on. And so my wife was supportive, Gina, wife of 42 years. And she's been in my corner the whole way. And without her support, I'm not sure I would have made that decision. She was encouraging. She says, "Yeah, honey, I'd love to see you come home." I said, "I'm not so sure about that, dear. Not sure you know what life would be like with me home all the time." But yeah, we went through all of those mental gyrations about what will it be like, but decided in the long run that it was time. And so January 20th was my last day. The 13th, we had a grand blowout party with a lot of folks there. Justin was there. What was it called? What I call a hashtag breaking Brad was the theme.
What's he cooking next? Or?
Cooking up. What's he cooking up next? Something like that. Yeah, I didn't even know what that meant at the time. So it was.
And now you know it's a meth reference.
Yes, it goes really well with my aura, doesn't it? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, in a band,
all those things.
Yeah, it all fits together.
But I'm looking forward to new beginnings. So I really needed time. I think I needed time to decide what is the next beginning for me. This is not the end. It's just a new beginning.
There you go.
And I need some time because, quite honestly, I've been in the squirrel cage for 43 years, arguably running hyperspeed at some time and slower at others. But when you're dedicated to your craft, you don't take breaks and you stick with it and you work hard and all that stuff. You do get tired and you do feel like that squirrel cage. And I felt like I was in there, but I could never see the off ramp off this squirrel cage. So you just pick one and you just, the rat jumps. And kind of put that down as a marker. And there's not a lot of advice out there on how and when it's time to retire. There's a lot of people tell you about, would teach you about things you can do, but it's a very personal decision.
Yeah.
And so while I loved this career, this industry, the people in it, it's time for a new beginning. And I've got, as usual, the project manager has lots of projects at home.
You mentioned when you got here, busier than ever. So what are you up to in these first few months?
I literally have been swamped. I just
media appearances and stuff.
Yeah, they just sound like this.
Yeah.
It's just so tiring. It's grueling. Now I've got, little projects around the home that I've foregone for quite some time. And I always enjoy those because he's still, the project guy is still the project guy. I ride a Harley. I like to ride. And
what do you have?
It's a 2001 Heritage Classic.
Is that a Softail?
Softail.
Yeah.
It's the last carbureted model. So
okay.
In the event the world gets hit by an EMP, I can still start it.
There you go. Better be full of gas because you won't be able to pump gas into it.
True. That's true.
Different issue. Yeah.
We got a lake home, and we love to boat, ski, pull the grandkids around.
Oh, I bet.
I love to golf, picking up a golf game. By the way, during my career, I was probably able to play scrambles like once every 3 months. I didn't play a lot of golf. I never felt like I had time. So now I have time, so I'm playing twice a week. There's this thought that I would suddenly improve my game by, somewhere between 7 and 10 strokes immediately upon retirement and playing more. All I can tell you is no. It does not happen that way.
No, that is one of those sports that's not like riding your bike, man. It is reps.
I had a friend last night tell me, it could get worse. What?
You get in your head more. I should be playing more. Why am I slicing into houses still? What's happening?
My father-in-law recently, it's been about 3 years now, retired from a career at ExxonMobil. Similar story. Loved it, but was retired at the correct time and at the right age, and has been playing a ton more golf. And he said that story. I think he plays like 3 or 4 days a week now, and he's got a little group of buddies he goes and plays with. They do it every day, and I think his story was similar. It dipped at first, and then he's like had to take a few lessons to fix bad habits that were causing that didn't manifest themselves when you play 3 or 4 times a year, but when you play 3 or 4 times a week, it starts to. So anyway, but he started trending back down his scores. So there's hope, even if it goes the wrong way at first. There's hope. Stay the course.
I'm enjoying it.
That's a golf pun. Nobody even
Stay the course.
Stay the course was a great dad joke.
What did you want us to stop and do a standing ovation?
I wanted somebody to be like, "Oh, good one."
All right, boys, let's keep in the fairway.
Yeah.
hey, he's in there. So it looks like the kiddos followed Dad's suit, huh? They're in the game as well.
Yeah, my oldest, Callie, is she's started a career at Price Waterhouse, went on to Ernst & Young, did a stint with me at Staubach JLL, and then CBRE, and now at Link Logistics. She's a VP, got that industrial deal going on. She's a VP for customer solutions, I believe, which means she has the all-important job of keeping existing customers happy, solutions and needs met, and she has a large region to take care of. She's my little A child, my little fighting Texas Aggie.
Nice.
04 grad.
Yeah.
Gig 'em. And my son, Craig, is 36, 37, starting a new career. He'd actually gone out there to Fullerton, California to start a church.
Oh,
and
cool.
He was an assistant pastor, and that church was great. Church is in great condition. 7 or 8 years later, he's decided to probably further his career, probably increase his earning potential, and get back into the business. And going from residential loan mortgage officer, he's now with Accelerate Resources, and he's buying infrastructure, believe it or not. So if you have cell phone towers or leases or billboards with cell phones on them, he's there to buy you out.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know that land. I know Link Logistics.
Yeah, I don't know that land either. Although I know it seems lucrative. I know some people who are in it. It seems interesting, but I know nothing about it at all. So.
My kids and my wife have been wonderfully supportive of me over the years in the career, and I can't ask for a better family. My daughter's here in town. I got 2 grandkids here. My son has three kids out in Fullerton, so we get to see them 4 or 5 times a year. But they are the reason. They're the reason behind what I did and why I did it. And you didn't have to look far to when you ask yourself, why am I doing this? To understand why you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see traits that they picked up from Dad, some deviations that they work through. And I always told my kids, I said, you know what? If you didn't like the way Mom and Dad showed you how to do it, good news. You'll get a chance to do it yourself.
That's right.
Try out your own approach and tell me how that works for you.
Yeah.
But they're both wildly successful. They have great wives, husbands. So, yeah.
What's your grandpa name?
I'm Pop.
Pop.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. My son called me Pop growing up, even as when he was a teenager, and that just stuck. It just had to be that. And so, the grandkids love it, and I love them. So,
what are their ages?
I got 2 10s, a 7 and an 8, and a 4-year-old.
They're loving getting out to the lake if they can.
They love to get out with Pop on the boat. That's a lot of fun.
Pop will toss them.
I'll toss them. Put you on that tube.
I mean, I don't know if this is gonna be weird or not, but going out with Pop on the boat kind of sounds amazing to me too. So,
well, Stuart, I'm available next week if you want to take a ride.
I haven't retired yet though. So,
do your kids say like, "Who is this guy?" Once the grandkids came on the scene, because I noticed that with my dad. All of a sudden, I'm like, this guy is a 180 from who I grew up with.
I don't know. I'm, just 2.5 months into this. I'm probably still a lot like I was, but I'm probably not a change of character, but that much.
Yeah.
But they probably see a lot of the same things. What's Dad doing now, right? What project is he doing? What's he planting? What's he fixing? What's he breaking to fix? And that type of thing.
Tell him there's something wrong in our kitchen. I bet he'll just mosey on over.
Yeah. My dad's still the same way with my dad, right? Like, it was just asking him for advice. He's always tinkering on something. Hey, can you, like, lots of times I just, like, need a hand, like, just enjoy the company. He ain't really doing much, but just there, and I'll enjoy the company of it. So, anyway, I'm sure there's some of that too.
Yeah, well, Justin call it hold the flashlight moment.
Hold the flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that. I sat there and watched my dad do that stuff, and his knuckles are all bleeding. And I said, Dad, you're bleeding. Are you hurt? What? What? Oh, yeah. Never mind.
Yeah.
It's like, just shake it off. It's no big deal.
That's
But you're
right.
bleeding. It's okay.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. All right. Well, I was going to spin us from here out, but did we miss anything along the way before we talk about the super answer to our book question and your one big thing? Did we miss anything along the way?
I think probably one of the unique things about a career is that not only was a native Texan, but it's 43 years in this market.
Oh, yeah.
In this market. And I had several jobs. I didn't have a lot of jobs. But I've watched some people get very anxious, in their career, and they want to make too many moves too early, and they're never not very satisfied. They're not getting the promotion or the props that they need, and so they move on real quick. Some of them go as far as to, well, I need to leave this market. I'm clearly not appreciated in this market, so I'm going to jump ship. I'll make the argument that if you stay in a market and develop these same friendships, these other resources amongst vendors and owners, clients, teammates, brokers. In our industry, it's architects, it's engineers, it's contractors, it's everybody. After 43 years, it made my job so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
I could have a terrible structural failure, and would have 6 structural engineers that I could call after hours who would come and help me fix this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only with time and having developed these relationships and stayed in this market and stayed in this industry are you able to develop that group of friends, a cast of characters that swim in the same pool with you, that are there to help you, and they'd love to help you. And that's been a real boon for my career. And I would recommend to anyone who is thinking about being a little bit impatient and maybe jumping around and short selling themselves on a career, stick with it.
Yeah.
And during this COVID period and the recovery period, we got so many people. They got names for what is the name for the thing where you stay but you're not going to work anymore?
Quiet quitting.
Oh my gosh, what?
We're glorifying it by talking about it all the time.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, and not to disparage anyone based on life circumstances, but this work from home thing, while it necessary for some, I think is a real detriment to career growth. That working in a team and learning amongst others and building off of each other, I think, is really missed in the work from home. Now, hybrid, I don't know, yet to be seen, but work from home, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people I'll hang out there for just a minute. But a lot of people wrestling with the decision, but how to handle it and manage it, and what the expectations are, and whether those expectations are reasonable, and how they're influencing and impacting the workplace and the quality. All of it. It's, I think, in a decade we'll look back and be like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we're in the midst of it and trying to figure it out. And I think we're saying the right things, we're thinking about the right things, but not really knowing what the outcome's going to be
right
down the road.
I'll wrap that up and just say I feel like I was able to cash in on that 43-year career and relationship building I did with the industry, and that's just kudos to others and the gratitude and the willingness of others to pour into me and me back to them, and must scratch each other's back, and there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So this is how we usually end, and you have the superpower answer. Have you previewed? Do you see what it says?
Oh yeah.
Because we usually ask for a book recommendation, and then ask for the one big thing. Like in this instance, it's even perhaps even bigger of a thing, because you've had the whole career and the vantage point of a retirement to look back on. But let's linger on the book question. I know the answer because I saw you write it down. But if you had to recommend a book for our listeners who are avid readers, what would be the book you'd recommend?
The Bible. I'm not a avid book reader. Part of my being, I think, has been a struggle with dedicating time to reading a book to better myself, even though I could see that the topic matter was salient to me, that I didn't feel like I had the time or would dedicate the time to finish the book and start it. And I can't start something and not finish it. That's the project manager in me. Mm-hmm. So I just look at the time dedication. I just stray away from it. So I haven't read a lot of books. There is one, I've even forgot the author. It's Your Ship Now. Story about an admiral who took over a Navy ship. And,
it's a great book.
And he's the ship is a bit dysfunctional. Not to draw any analogies with my career, but they took a ship that was not necessarily a higher performing Navy ship, and this admiral changed the cultural dynamic of that ship to accomplish what he needed to accomplish to have that a high performing ship, and won some awards for it. But and I probably read that book it's probably been 7-8 years ago. So that just tells you how avid a book reader I am. But I do, I'm mostly in the news and sports and short reads, periodicals, magazines, that type of thing. But my source of guidance, inspiration, daily living is the Bible. I read it every day, every morning, or most mornings. And I don't read a lot. I mean, it's a chapter or two, just 2 or 3 chapters. And I get more out of it, and I read it cover to cover as a typical project manager, start at the front and at the back. I pick up more every time I read, and I've done that over and over. I guess I've read the Bible now, I don't know, 9-10 times. But that's only to say I like being in that book. Mm-hmm. And being in that book is being present in that book with my Lord and Savior and guider of everything I do. And so if I'm not feeling good, or I'm not feeling well or good about the day, or I'm concerned about the health or somebody's well-being, I can find something there. I can find nuggets. I can cast it out there and apply it. And it's a good source of conversation every now and then. My wife and I, what are you in? Well, what are you in? What are you reading about? I'm reading about that. But that's truth. And I'm not sure I would go anywhere else. Maybe in the retirement mode, I'll find some time to read some
romance novels,
something, some Tom Clancy or something. Love some Tom Clancy of some sort.
There you go.
But I look at those paperbacks and go, good Lord, that looks like
it's a major undertaking.
Can I finish it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a little bit more time now. So you could allocate some to crushing Harry Potter or something like that. Just trying to think of something.
I'm trying to keep up with all the people who say, hey, have you seen this on Netflix? Have you seen this on Amazon?
Gosh.
I'm like, hey, when is everybody watching this stuff?
Oh, it's like 17 different TV apps out there right now.
Yeah.
Gina comes home. She's connected with several groups, and they're all weighing in on what they're watching, the ladies that she's with. And so she'll come home with a list, and we'll try them. And I'll say, all right, which one of these lady friends of yours recommended this one? Because while some have been good, many have been, no.
Yes.
Neither one of us, we're halfway through, we're out.
Yeah. Same. All right. So one big thing, that's usually how we come to a complete stop here on the podcast is what's the one big thing from Brad? And not that it's it is a grand undertaking, because we're sort of asking you to, in a few sentences, think back about an entire career in construction. But what is it, man? What's the one big thing?
Yeah, I think I've already talked about it. Being a student of the game, learn your craft, hone it, nurture it, cultivate it, dig in, get into the weeds, to the point where you are a subject matter expert, or at least in your own mind. And then figure out a way to find your own value statements and how you apply that expertise and articulate it to others. Practice it. Get in front of a mirror. Do your elevator speech. Couple of value plays. Keep your case studies in your back pocket if you need to prove it in case somebody asks it. And I am convinced that the most successful people in this industry are ones who not only can execute from the weeds, but also turn around and sell it. That would be my advice. I mean, that's how I would sum up if I was successful. If I have one good characteristic, one good trait that probably my parents gave me, which was reason for a lot of my success, was just the others that came around me. And picking those individuals, whether they were teammates or employees, I do a great job at picking great people to team with. And I'm looking first for character. Character is the most important. Aptitude second, somebody who's willing, hungry, and able. And then last, skill set's third. So you can always teach a skill set, but it's hard to teach character and aptitude. And I credit my parents for just teaching me a good work ethic and knowing who to hang around with and who to hang with and how to elevate yourself or elevate your own success surrounding yourself with good people.
Even if those people did have long hair and carried amps up the stairs, and
even if they can't play the drums or if they don't have a CUDA,
they had good character because they didn't ding the walls, so acceptable.
That's true.
Well, Brad, it was a pleasure to spend a few moments with you talking today. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate you being here, man.
Stuart, thanks. Kevin, it's been great. Thanks for letting me share story, and it's been good.